Welcome to New Birmingham. Even though it somehow managed to survive the apocalypse, New Birmingham is quite far from what we could call a functional city. It struggles with overpopulation and a lack of all basic goods. Since its foundation, it has been ruled by a democratic government. The people are at constant odds with each other, and the city itself is a slum that hasn't developed for 30 years. Tired of this situation, the citizens have elected me as the steward to lead the council and guide the city towards a better future. My first action in office is naturally to collect additional taxes. I then send frostbreaking teams to secure coal veins and more fertile soil. Next, I proceed toward the construction of 3 new housing districts. But that is not enough to satiate the city's needs. I establish a research institute, where the various communities can propose and create new technologies that will hopefully improve New Birmingham. First on the agenda, blasting coal mines to excavate more fuel so that we can warm the city. After that, I move on to begin fixing the outrageously outdated legislation of our city. And thus, the first meeting of the council is called. The primary topic being whether we should use well-tested chemical additives like sawdust in our food as a way to combat the looming famine.
The delegates have spoken. The law takes effect.
And with the construction of another food district, we pretty much solved the hunger issue as of now. With the only pressing issue being heating, the laborers propose a way to decrease the heat consumption of our housing districts. Their plan relies on using unencapsulated asbestos.
Gentlemen, you had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
We will put asbestos everywhere, in the walls, in people's clothes, and even as one of the new chemical food additives. And with some extra coal mines, as well as forcing everyone to stare at pipes every Sunday after church, we fix the heating issue as well. Unfortunately, without this natural predator, the malnourished Victorian child begins to overpopulate our streets. To solve this issue, we are presented with 2 options. Building schools where they can safely learn and develop, so that they can have a better future, or family apprenticeship, which is just a fancy way to say child labor.
The votes are in. The measure passes.
I love democracy.
Though some are not pleased with my decision, the city has never seen better days, and the population starts to increase. With our survival secured and hope back in people's hearts, a new faction emerges in the council. The Legionnaires, a group that sees the eternal winter as a war that humanity can win. They believe that through progress we can push back the frost. Through equality we can build a more prosperous society, and through tradition we can ensure stability for generations to come. They are our new best friends. In theory, a wise leader should listen to both sides to establish a compromise and utilize the strengths of every party. But that is not the fate I have imagined for the city, because who is the steward, if not the field marshal in our fight against the eternal winter? With the Legionnaires' assistance, I begin steering New Birmingham towards my vision. We expand the housing districts, so that no one has to live like they're in New York.
I have to go to work.
We begin mass production of goods to improve the standard of living for our people. We give out free essentials so that no citizen goes starving. And despite the name and its reputation, our city even starts to attract outsiders. With this rapid improvement, people start cheering for me and my rule, while the Legionnaires begin organizing rallies to speed up our work even further. But not everyone agrees with our vision. In direct opposition to my agenda and the Legionnaire dominance of the Council, a new faction rises: the Proteans. They reject progress in favor of using old technology from before humanity collapsed. They consider the weak as mere tools, to be used as they please. They seek to abandon their humanity and own flesh in order to perfect themselves.
From the moment I understood the weakness of my flesh, it disgusted me.
With the political landscape fully developed, I begin my maneuvers, trying to undermine the Proteans' efforts, all the while keeping them satisfied enough to not rebel. And so I grant them the privilege of choosing the next law to be voted on, but behind their back, I make deals to ensure the legislation fails. None the wiser to my actions, they are appeased enough to be willing to cooperate. You might remember how I said that I will support the Legionnaires in every single law. Well, I lied, as every politician does. As it turns out, the Proteans are good for one thing: managing the generator. By going the route of progress, we could upgrade the generator to be able to consume extra fuel in exchange for increasing production efficiency in the entire city. There is one catch though. This enhancement would force the generator to use only oil, and we do not have any oil. What we do have, however, are vast networks of mines providing ethically extracted coal and geothermal vents, which would be rendered completely useless. That is why, for this particular research, we are going with adaptation. While it does not give any efficiency bonuses, at least not yet, it allows us to use all three of the fuel types. And a few weeks later, with the upgrade finalized, the problem of heat is seemingly completely eradicated. For a brief moment, it looks like after nearly 4 decades, we are finally close to defeating the frost. But that is when the scientists tell me the grave news. In a few months, a massive storm will block out the sun and drastically decrease the temperature for over half a year. People begin storming the streets to gather as much asbestos as they can. And in the ensuing chaos, the Proteans begin protesting. They state that only they can survive the storm by replacing their limbs with metal, as metal does not develop hypothermia. And after careful consideration, I conclude that this plan might not be in the best interests of people who do not cosplay as Robocop. So I appeased the protesters by improving the mass economy and voting in a law I was already going to propose. With the protests dealt with, I regained my grip over the city. Unfortunately, the unrest has cost us a lot of time. I quickly expand the housing districts and send additional very short employees into the mines as a desperate attempt to prepare the city for the coming storm. All the while, the Legionnaires propose a law normalizing the funeral procedures in the city. This is going to come in handy real soon. And merely a few days later, the city breathes its last breath before the storm arrives. All of our food districts freeze over and the coal reserves begin decreasing faster than the value of the German mark after World War I. I set the generator into maximum overdrive to try and save some fuel, but even that is not enough. The cold begins to creep through our thick asbestos walls, the generator just barely keeping the city alive. The tension increases as more and more houses are cut off from the heating due to dwindling fuel supply. And the only reason this happens is due to protests and political bickering blocking our minds. While this is not enough to dismantle the council, with the will of the people, we pass a law allowing you to directly influence the voting process if the need arises. But as our supplies are near depletion and the generator close to failure from the constant stress, the sun begins to shine through the clouds and the storm quiets down. We have survived. With the storm passing, it becomes clear that we cannot survive for long with just what we have. And so I start a new endeavor to scout out the frostlands surrounding our city in search for more resources. Going forward, I completely denounce the Proteans. These morons actually believe you can adapt to live in -100 degrees through eugenics and drinking diesel. They cannot be allowed to continue. And so, when the Proteans begin another protest, the Legionnaires got it covered. A mere few weeks later, the scouts return with their first findings, allowing us to begin harvesting the vast resources of the Frostland, while at the same time we implement new ideas to speed up the process of exploration. Next, I create a police force loyal to me, with the goal of protecting the city from further unrest. And with that, the rebellious Proteans become eerily quiet. Our population grows as our reach extends further and further beyond the city walls. We expand our logistics network, find more and more resources, construct more housing, and some kid even wants to become a poet.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
Fuel, food, and building materials slowly begin to flow into the city. We expand so fast that we begin to run low on workforce. And so we improvise, molding the laws of the city to help in our endeavor as the people rally behind us. We begin building massive skyways as our extraction finally kicks off for good. Alas, not all news are so positive, as our scientists learn that the storm shall soon return. But this time, we will be ready. We slowly begin implementing automatons in more and more workplaces for better efficiency. We construct geothermal plants to increase heat production. We build housing blocks with extra layers of asbestos, and we stockpile as much coal as we possibly can. And after a few weeks, the storm hits the city once again. All activity out in the Frostland halts as the people huddle together in their homes. Our machines ensure a steady stream of fuel despite the weather, and all the upgrades to the generator give us a fighting chance against the immense cold. But the storm does not relent and tension begins to rise. So I form a bureau of propaganda to keep the people calm. Weeks of darkness pass as the soil freezes over and our food reserves begin to dwindle. The coal stockpiles begin to thin out, and tension rises. I call emergency shifts in our coal mines to supply the generator, and the storm finally leaves. Even though the storm was even more severe than previously, thanks to my preparations, we have survived with acceptable casualties. But not everyone sees it that way, as a certain eeriness befalls the streets, and as I put the city back on its feet, the gods report of rumors of a plot aimed at deposing me. So I established a secret police to investigate and prevent such an occurrence. But equipment begins to disappear from factories as simultaneously more and more people go missing. And then it happens. One of the highest ranking members of the Legionnaires receives the London treatment while leaving the council hall. At the same time, explosions are heard throughout the city as armed Proteans march out into the streets and New Birmingham is set ablaze.
Attention, emergency! Attention, emergency!
As the dust settles, I stand victorious. No one left to stand in my way. I then finally fulfill my vision of the city without the need for compromise. But alas, after decades of leadership, my duty is done and it is time to move on. I can only hope that the utopia I've built will not crumble in my absence.